Welcome to the Coach Dave Love Podcast mini pod edition, or I'm kind of calling it fourth quarter rally, where we put 12 minutes up on the clock and we're down 10 points and we have to make a comeback before the clock expires. Coach Dave, how do we feel today?
I feel outstanding. I feel like we're throwing a whole bunch of mini pod potential titles at the wall and seeing what sticks. So
the leader in my clubhouse is fourth quarter rally, and we're already 30 seconds off the clock. Coach Dave, I don't know anything about the topic you've chosen today. Tell me about it.
Well, all you know is trade-offs. So in shooting, like pretty much every habit or a lot of habits have a significant trade-off. Like the human body was not designed for shooting. And so an experienced coach understands these different trade-offs and can help a player figure out which side of the trade-off is better. So an example, and we'll kind of go through, I think, about 3 or 4 different examples in the quarter, and go from there. One example that we've talked about in the past is a low set point. So dropping a set point where I would say the optimal position would sort of be above the nose, dropping that down to below the nose and chin level gives you more room to generate power. For players that need power, or for shots that are of a significant distance that need more power, that can be an effective move. But the trade-off is it's harder now to get your hand underneath the middle of the basketball or underneath the basketball. So you put yourself in a position to now shoot the ball more forward, flatter, or have your hand underneath the side of the basketball and now need your guide hand. Sort of, it makes sense, the idea of the trade-off?
Absolutely. So it puts a ceiling on how much arc you can generate, but also raises the ceiling on how far you can shoot from.
Right. Yeah. And a lot of these come down to a version of, is it more important for the player to be comfortable, or is it more important for them to be optimal? Well, if they can execute the suboptimal move really well, then sure, comfort might be the side of the argument that we favor. But if they're a weak shooter, but they do it in a way that's comfortable, well, then maybe we need to favor the more optimal side because comfort isn't working for them.
So in our modern basketball, where we have to be able to shoot threes, if the trade-off for power is I'm shooting that shot from 16 feet, like this is bad for our global offense. Like that is a trade-off in itself, where I can't shoot threes. I have to shoot 16 footers because I'm shooting my comfortable shot. It's not an optimal situation regardless.
Yeah. And so in this particular podcast, I think I'm speaking more to like the micro trade-offs. But that's not taking away from what the validity of what you just said. So do you want me to go through a couple more examples of some common trade-offs?
Yeah, we covered that low set point trade-off in another full pod, I believe.
I believe so.
Full pod. So yeah, fire away with a couple more of the trade-offs.
So a lot of these end up being like these big arguments that we have as coaches. And so that right there shows that we're just viewing it from two different perspectives, and they're probably both right with some players. But the experienced coach sort of understands that it's not black or white. It's case by case and probably gray area. And so another common example will be turning the feet. Okay, so people that will say that will argue in favor of players turning their feet when they shoot, they'll talk about like the comfort factor. It puts strain on your shoulder to get your elbow in a square stance. They'll talk about alignment of the elbow. So that would be one side of the dynamic. The flip side of it is if you do that, you're increasing the likelihood of potentially jumping in the line of your feet and creating energy um, to the left as a right-handed shooter because your feet are pointed to the left, or causing a curved ball path where the path of the ball is coming up now the left side of your body relative to the line that you're shooting at, but it feels in a straight line relative to the direction that your body is pointed. So which one is better? Case by case basis. Are those which side does that particular player need the value in, or which side is causing the problem?
You also told me one time you guys did a study about turning of the feet affecting ball spin, and it was, I don't know if it was peer reviewed kind of to that level. However, talk to me a little bit about that. Like that is, I mean, that's exactly what you're talking about. Curved. Actually, you're talking about curved ball path and also altered ball spin. Is that correct?
Yeah. I mean that's a whole other
Yeah. Okay.
long episode in and of itself. But yeah, the turning of the feet can affect the way that the ball comes out of your hands, even though they're at complete opposite ends of your shot. Your feet are touching the floor, and the ball is coming out of your hand is 6, 7, 8 feet above that. But they are related, and one does affect the other.
So on the flip side of that argument, if we're forcing the turn in to closer to square, we're sacrificing comfort for a more potentially optimal setup. Is that kind of the trade-off here?
Yeah, potentially. That would be probably one of the more common that a lot of us have tight shoulders or tight traps and lats, and so like getting into that position where the fingers are along the target line can be more challenging, and turning the feet does help with the comfort aspect and the alignment of that, but that doesn't mean that it doesn't cause other problems therein. There's a trade-off there. So that would be one of them. Another of the more common is going to be like the idea that you see all over Instagram of we want a more fluid shot path. That if you imagine viewing the ball path from the side, for most players it forms an S curve, and the logic of the day, and something I would have taught as well in the past, is we want that to be as smooth as possible. The smoother the ball path, the more power it generates. And I would still argue that is true, but unfortunately, a lot of us aren't aware there's a trade-off here. What's the trade-off? You have more energy, but a lot of mature players don't need more energy. They need the correct amount of energy, and giving them more just gives them a longer shot to control. And so the common example I'll give of this, the trade-off of this fluid ball path, is the baseball player's swing. If you want to hit more home runs, have a bigger, longer swing that generates more power, but you might strike out more. You want to hit for average more, put more balls in play, have a shorter swing. Doesn't generate as much power, but helps you make cleaner and more consistent contact. Which one would we like to be as shooters? Do we want to be the person that, yeah, I can get the ball to the rim from a great distance, but I don't always connect, and sometimes I miss big? Or, especially when you're 6'7" and 220 pounds of muscle, you've got enough power, do you want to shorten up that motion so it's easier to control? And this is one of the ones that, like, I think as a basketball culture we might be getting wrong.
That is fascinating. When I was in college, I played against this guy from Baltimore named Paul Blake. who I watched in warm-up hit 10 threes in one after the other, a little bit higher arc, a little bit higher arc, a little bit higher arc, until he's shooting this absolute sky ball, which at the time was the most insane thing. I was like, this is the craziest thing I've ever seen. So difficult to control that much power and that much ball speed, if you will, coming out of your hand. So that's an additional trade-off in itself, the amount of arc in the amount of surface area of the rim that you have to shoot it through, which is it's a tangent from the argument or from the conversation that you're generating.
It's another great example.
Okay.
Where like the yes, getting more arc on the ball gives you more surface area, but those little more surface area for the ball to fit through the rim. But those 1 or 2 foot per second variances in velocity that we all face, or the 1 or 2 degrees variance of our intended target or launch angle versus what actually happened, cause a more significant discrepancy in the distance covered. In other words, the more arc you put on the ball, the harder it is to control the distance of your shot.
Dave,
and so
we're at 11:30 right now. I feel like we could do a trade-off series where we do a whole pod on every one of these little trade-offs. I think that's awesome. I think these are great conversations to continue having. Coach Dave, clock's winding down. This has been great. The people can find you at Coach Dave Love on all the Instagrams, CoachDaveLove.com. Sign up for the newsletter. My name is Matt Robertson, and this has been Fourth Quarter Rally. Stop by and see us next week.
Bye, everyone.